Y'all mind if I talk to you? See, the man that you see standing up here every Sunday morning, singing his heart out to God, that's not the man I was. Now, I've been asking God all week, what word sums up who I was. And the word he gave me was I was a cyclist. See, I was a creation of my own circumstance, an extension of my own environment. I was a prisoner of my own perspective and a victim of my own viewpoint. See, I was always worried about what other people thought. And in worrying about what other people thought, I began to compare my life to their life. And what happened was appearance became more important to me than reality, because when I would compare my life to other people's lives, the reality was mine didn't measure up. And so I started lying so that I would appear to be different and better than what I actually was. And that lying led to manipulation, because now I need you to believe the lie that I'm telling you. That manipulation led to being able to use people and use that to my advantage. The problem with the lie is that it gets exposed. And so when I would get confronted and have to deal with it, instead of dealing with it, I walk away. I run. And what I did was I created this cycle. The cycle of, it became normal for me to lie, to manipulate, and to use, and to run. And that became what it was. And this cycle, not only did it make me make poor decisions, which it did, I made a lot of poor decisions. But even worse than that was the character that it built. See, it was that character that I carried into every other aspect of my life. But it was during one of these times of running that I had my first encounter with Jesus. I'd gotten into some trouble here in Kentucky, and I called my sister in Florida and said, "Can I come stay with you?" So I moved to Florida, and on my second day in Florida, she invited me to church. And this was in 1999. And I walked into this church, and we were both raised Jehovah's Witnesses. So when I walked into church, it was different. The church was huge. I sat down at the pew, and the preacher started talking. And the more he started talking, the smaller that church got. Because this man was dealing with everything that I was going through at that moment in my life. And we get out of the service and get back to my sister's house, and I asked her, I said, "Did you tell the pastor I was coming? Did you give him some background or something?" And she said, "Jamie, that's not even our regular pastor. That's a guest speaker." She said, "If you were feeling that way, that was God talking to you." And I never experienced that. And so I tried to listen, right? And I started going to church with my sister, and I tried doing the things that I saw everybody else, the things that I thought somebody who went to church was supposed to do. Joined the choir, I did all of these things, and nothing really changed for me. Nothing changed. And so I quit. But then that created a new cycle in my life. Because now then, life would happen, I would go to church, nothing would change, I would quit going to church. Life would happen, I would go to church, nothing would change, I would quit going to church, and this cycle just kept going and going and going. And for 15 years, I went through this. It got to the point to where I had exhausted all options. I thought, this ain't for me. I can't get there. It's not good for me. And when I got to that point, I would even start to tell people that I believed I was agnostic, meaning that I knew there was a God, but I didn't know that God cared about me. I didn't know that he cared about what I did on a daily basis. And so that's how I went about my life. And then in 2016, I got a phone call that would change the trajectory of my life. I answered the phone, and this lady on the other end asked for my wife, and I said, "My wife's not here, can I take a message?" And she said, "Well, I just wanted to let her know that the paperwork is good, and she can move into the house whenever she's ready." And said, okay, I hung the phone up and I thought for a minute. It didn't really throw me off too bad because I knew my wife was looking for a place for her dad to live, and I thought that's what it was. So a little bit later, I'm talking to my wife, and I was like, oh yeah, by the way, so-and-so called. And they said something about the paperwork's good, you can move in. To what I thought was jokingly said, are you leaving or something, you moving out? And the silence that followed was when I knew. Shortly after that, I found myself alone for the first time in my life. And it was in that being alone that I was forced to look at myself in the mirror. And I started to see the cycles that I had been going through, the cycles that I had been creating. And I started to understand that the problem wasn't with everybody else. The problem wasn't with how I was raised and all of that. The problem was with me and my viewpoint. The problem was with how I had created my life to be. And so I started seeing that, and now that I was aware of that fact, I said, okay, now I got two choices. Either I can keep doing this, or I can break the cycle, or I can try to do something else. And I opted for that because the man that I saw in the mirror wasn't the man that I wanted to be. And so I started reading self-help books and power of the mind and all of this stuff. And I started changing my thoughts, and I changed my perspective, and my attitude changed, and my actions changed, and things started getting better for me. It got to the point where my wife and I, we were still separated, but we were talking, we were going out, I was spending as much time at her house as I was mine. Things were going good, but remember, I was doing all of this on my own because I had lost faith in God. And the problem that I found with doing these things on my own was if I'm doing it on my own, I have to sustain this on my own. And I got to a point in my life where I couldn't. And no matter how hard I tried to think positive and be this different person that I was trying to be, I woke up one morning and it just wasn't there. And so the next day I said, I'm going to do different today. I'm going to be better today. And I couldn't do it. And it went on and on and on, and I couldn't shake it no matter how hard I tried. I couldn't shake it. And one day I remember driving to work one morning, and out of nowhere I just cried out to God. I said, God, if you really out there, and you really care about me personally, I said, man, you got to show me something. And it's got to be something I can't deny, because otherwise I can't believe, God, and I want to believe. And nothing happened. Nothing happened until something happened. You see, a few months after I prayed that prayer, I was on my phone and I was scrolling through Facebook. And as I was scrolling through Facebook, I seen a post by a place y'all might know called Restorations Church. And it was a video, and that video was tagged Spiritual Biscuits and Gravy. And that title intrigued me to click play, and I watched it. And I saw somebody who I went to school with, Luther Rose. There he is, playing the guitar and singing. And I thought, hey, I know him. And I went on about my day, and later on that afternoon, I pulled in here, and I go to World Finance, where I've been going every month paying a bill, because if any of y'all ever took a loan out with World Finance, you know that you're paying that thing off forever. That's the longest $1,000 loan I've ever took in my life. It really is. But I went in there, and as I pull in this parking lot, I look up and I see a sign on the building that says Restorations Church. And I thought, how long has that been there? Because I never noticed it. And as I pull in the parking spot, I look down at the bench that's sitting out there, and I see Luther sitting on the bench. And I said, that's Luther. So I get out the car, and I start walking in World Finance, and something stops me in my tracks and says, go say hi. So I turn around, I go say hi. I said, Luke, I don't know if you remember me or not, but I'm Jamie. He looks at me, and he was like, what's up, brother? And he gets up and he shakes my hand, he gives me a hug, and says, man, how you doing? You still singing? And all this and that. And I said, I'm dabbling a little bit. He said, man, come in here and check out what we got going on. And so I come in here, and we sit down at this stage, and he plays his guitar, and I sing the only Christian song at that time that I could think of, as I can only imagine. And we go over that a couple of times, and we talk for a minute, and I was like, all right, man, well, it's good seeing you. And I leave, and he walks me out to my car. And when he walks me to my car, he was like, oh, yeah, by the way, we're about to have prayer meeting. You're more than welcome to stick around. At this point, I'm like, what can that hurt, right? You know? So I come in here, and I walk in here, and I'm in here, and I meet Miss Betty and Miss Brenda, and Phil and Darlene are sitting here, and the atmosphere was just nice, and it was good. And I remember Pastor Kent sat down, and I don't remember what you spoke that day.
Nobody else does.
But I remember what really drew me in was you said, guys, you said, folks, I've been struggling with this all week myself. And I sat there like, wow, this the leader of the church admitting that he's human too, you know, that's crazy. And so like I said, the atmosphere was excellent. Everything felt good. And when I walked out of here that night, I walked out of here a different person. And I've been a different person ever since then. And shortly after that, this series of events took place that reminded me of that prayer that I prayed in that car that morning with no faith. Because this series of events took place that I could not credit to anything other than God. But remember, I said I'm a cyclist, right? And if y'all that know me, if you notice that as quick as I came in this church, all of a sudden you didn't see me again. And you didn't see me for a couple of months. Because I had to go back through one more time. The difference was that at that point, when I walked out of here a different person, when those events that took place in my life, I realized that was God. And I looked up and I said, okay, God. I said, God, you got my attention now. What now? And that, I believe, is the moment that I opened my heart up to receive Jesus. It wasn't coming down here and standing up and doing what I thought church people had to do. It was that moment when I knew something had happened different in my life. Something had changed different in my life. And so even though I tried to run again, this time, God said, no, you ain't running away this easy. It's not going to happen this easy because now you know that you have a purpose. So now you know that there are things that you're supposed to be doing. Now you know that I love you. I didn't know any of that before. And if can I keep going for a minute? Okay. It reminds me of one of my favorite stories in the Bible, one of my favorite parables that Jesus tells. It's the parable of the prodigal son. And I love that one. And I always related to that one because I can understand the prodigal son, right? Like I knew what it was like to squander everything that I had and to run the wrong way and to come crawling back. But the thing about that story, and I'm just going to recap it, it's found in Luke chapter 15, verses 11 through 32. Y'all can check later on and verify that what I'm saying is true. But Jesus, the father had two sons, right? And the youngest son, he said, Dad, I don't want to wait for you to die. Go ahead and give me my money now, right? I want my inheritance now. And so the father did. He split the money up. And the Bible says that the young son, shortly after that, he went to a faraway land. And in no time at all, he blew all his money on partying, having a good time, women, all of that, right? And the Bible says that at the same time that he blew all his money, there was a famine that came across the land. And all of a sudden, this young man found himself with no job, no food. And so he hired himself out to a person in that land. And he hired himself out as somebody that fed the pigs. And the Bible says that he was so hungry that while he was feeding the pigs, that slop looked good to him. Now you got to be hungry. And I don't know if you've seen what, y'all from here, Breckenridge County, so y'all know what pigs eat. So he got to be hungry if that's what looked good. But then the Bible says, and I love the way it's worded, because it says when he came to his senses. How many of us have had that come to my senses? When I came to my senses moment, when it clicked and said, that's what. But it says he came to his senses, and he thought, even in my father's house, his hired servants got leftover food. And I'm over here thinking about eating pig slop, you know? He said, and then he started thinking, he said, man, I'm going to go back to my father, and I'm going to say, Dad, look, I know I sinned against you, I sinned against heaven, I'm not worthy to be called your son, but hire me as a servant. And the Bible says he headed off that way. And that was my view of the prodigal son for the longest time, was he left and he came back. And recently, going over that story, God showed me something else even more important than that. Because if you keep reading, the Bible says that he says, okay, the son says, I'm going to go back to my father and say, I've sinned against you, I've sinned against heaven. Hire me as a servant. So he started going back. And it said that the father, it said, while he was still a long way off. I'll say it again. While he was still a long way off, the father saw him. That means if the father saw him while he was a long way off, that means the father was looking for his son. He was looking for him. And so that dawned on me. I was like, wow, I never thought about that part of the story. And maybe that's what I was supposed to get from it all along. Maybe everybody else got it, but I didn't. And when that dawned on me, I was like, wow. And then he says, I picture that like the father just every morning, him and his son that stuck around, going out, going into the field to work. Every day he sits out a little bit longer on the front porch, just looking, hoping that maybe his son is coming back, right? And so it says that while he was a long way off, the father saw him coming. But the father didn't do what we would do. He didn't sit there and wait for him. He didn't wait for him saying, I told you you'd be back, right? I knew you couldn't make it out there on your own. No, it says he ran to him. Ran to him. Then he didn't run to him and rub it in his face. It says he ran to him and he embraced him. It says he kissed him. This man who was in the pigs, feeding pigs and smelling and stinky and dirty, he didn't say clean him up first and then go. No, he looked at the son said, Dad, look, I sinned against you. I sinned against heaven. I'm not worthy to be called your son. Hire me as a servant. His dad didn't even acknowledge what he said. His dad looked at his servant. He said, go give me the finest robe. Give me the ring. Give me the sandals for his feet. He said, kill the fat calf. Not the little one. Get the big one. Because we've been waiting on this day. Because my son, who was dead, is now alive. That's our God. Folks, that's the God that we serve. That's the God that's looking for us. And when I came to that revelation, it made me think of how many times Jesus was sitting on the edge of his seat because I walked in the church. And he was sitting there thinking, maybe this is the time. Maybe today is the day that he finally gives it to me. And he sat there for 15 years waiting. And finally I did it. And God said, get the finest robe. Get the ring, get the sandals, put them on his feet. Because after that, when I walked back in this church, I went to Pastor and I said, Pastor, use me whatever way. Because at that moment I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, I belonged here. That God had a purpose and a plan for me here in Restoration's church. That he had something going on in this church. And I get to be a part of it. Blew my mind. And as I continue to learn and study, and God just continues to reveal himself to me and the great love that he has for each and every one of us. And I don't know who I'm talking to today, but somebody needs to hear that. Somebody needs to know that it ain't about getting yourself together first. We can't do it. We cannot do it. It's about giving yourself to God. So I encourage anybody that might be thinking, that might be going through emotions. Just remember Jesus. It's on the edge of the seat. He's just waiting. He's waiting for it. That's why today you're going to see me go into that water. Amen. That's why I'm going to come out a different person. Because I know what my God has done for me. And that's the same thing that my God wants to do for each and every one of you. Praise God.